My name's Rob Gardner, president of ASR. We're here at the West 3rd Street Roundhouse. You can see the 2100 behind me here, which is our main project today. American Steam Railroad was founded in 2005. Our basic mission is to restore and operate mainline steam locomotives. Originally, we acquired a Frisco 282 Mikado, the number 1352. That locomotive resides today in Taylorville, Illinois. Not long after acquiring the 1352, the opportunity came about to get involved with the life of the 2100. We were able to secure a multi-year lease for the locomotive and brought her here to Cleveland in 2015. And she's been the focus of our efforts since then.
The 2100 here originally started life as a 280 consolidation, and the Reading, needing faster, more powerful locomotives, requested from the War Production Board for the ability to purchase new locomotives, being steam or diesel. The War Production Board declined that, but said you could rebuild what you had. And the Reading basically took that to the maximum by taking older 280s, built back in 1923, and after reutilizing the Firebox and first boiler course, ordered all new parts from Baldwin and more or less built a hot rod. They turned the 280s into 484s. The Reading then utilized these up until the mid-50s, but by 1957, steam was over at the Reading. However, although the Reading did scrap ultimately 26 of the T1s, 4 still remained, and they were utilized in the Reading Rambles from 1959 to 1964.
The very first corporate steam-powered excursions of any railroad in the United States. When that program ended in the late 1960s, those 4 locomotives went to a scrapyard in Baltimore. And when the American Freedom Train came around in the mid-70s, the 2100 and the 2101 were acquired for that purpose. After the American Freedom Train and Chessie Steam Special days, Ross Rowland, Bill Benson, and Richard Kuhn decided they wanted to restore the 2100. She had been the parts donor for the 2101 on the Freedom Train days. And so down in Hagerstown, Maryland in the mid-80s, they returned 2100 to service. Unfortunately, the plans they had at the time didn't pan out, so the locomotive, it was moved to Brewster, Ohio, where she was stored for a few years, then moved to the Ohio Central shops at Morgan Run. At that point, she was sold at auction, and at that time, she went to Canada. When Tom Payne moved the 2100 to Canada, she was operable, she was burning coal. He took the locomotive to St. Thomas, Ontario, and he decided that the best thing for the operations of the 2100 was to convert the locomotive to burn oil. He did not remove the grates, but he installed an oil burning system, put a bunker in the tender, and set her up to burn oil. The system worked to varying degrees depending on who you talk to. It's not a bad idea to have a locomotive burn oil today because coal is getting harder to get. There are more and more environmental restrictions on it, and it's less popular to see coal being used as a fuel source. The only detrimental effect we found in the Firebox was one single blister on one of the thermic siphons, which we have cut out and replaced.
It was then deemed that the operations would be best suited out in the state of Washington, so she was transferred out to that location and operated for 2 seasons out there in 2006 and 2007. When that operation ended, the locomotive was put in storage clear till 2014. And that is when American Steam Railroad contacted the owner and worked out a long-term lease arrangement for the locomotive to be brought back east here, and in Cleveland, Ohio is where we're at today, and then restored to operating condition, which is what we are currently doing.
I've always been drawn to like huge mechanical machines, like things that should not be possible but are. My whole life I've been running steam traction engines, which is just the steam version of a agricultural tractor. I had a lot of steam experience, but no railroad experience. One of my tractor groups that I'm in, one of the members there told me about ASR, and I was really interested, but I was only probably 14 at the time, so I waited till I was 16 and drove up myself and kind of saw what it was all about.
My interest in trains started back in 1998 when my great uncle Jack and my aunt, who both worked for Conrail at the time, brought me and my parents and sister down. They gave us a little quick tour of the yard, and they brought us to a couple of parked locomotives, and we were looking at them, and then Another friend of theirs came by, said, all right, let's go on in. And they sat me down in the engineer's seat where I was able to handle the throttle, blow the whistle, ring the bell. And I drove my first train, 5 feet granted, but still drove my first train at the age of 5 under Conrail. Ever since then, it's been just nonstop with the trains. Fast forward a couple years to 2019, I was at my friend Dave's house running trains when the now president, Rob Gardner, stopped by with a couple of parts they were fabricating for the Firebox. When I saw that, I just said, you know what, I remember learning about this a couple years back. Right before the pandemic started, put in my application. Ever since then, just been here working on the 2100, starting off with fabricating Firebox stables.
One of the things that some people may or may not realize is how much expansion and contraction happens inside of a boiler when it is hot and when it is cold. And just like on a balloon, if you blow it up and then let it deflate and blow it up and let it deflate, you can get thin spots in it. Well, the same thing happens in metal.
After some more lengthy inspection of the Firebox, realized that the 2 inner side sheets on the inside of the Firebox had reached a point of almost being at the condemnation limit. And we just felt that we wanted to have those side sheets renewed. So what that entailed was cutting out and removing the side sheets. We had new side sheets formed, brought them here to the roundhouse, and then started a lengthy process of fitting, drilling new holes for the mud ring rivets. Then once that was fitted in place, then we fully welded the perimeter, the 2 sides and the top, installed new mud ring rivets on both sides. Then we got into the actual stay bolts themselves. Almost 550 stay bolts had to be replaced across the 2 side sheets that were replaced as well. Part of that work also required removing the 2 circulator tubes on the outer extremities of the Firebox because they were too close to the side sheets to do the work in there. So those arch tubes have been replaced. The flexible and rigid stay bolts are all fully welded in place. We have all new gaskets, and we've replaced the stay bolt caps and have replaced those as well.
Thankfully, that work is all done. Our fantastic volunteers and our great contractors got that all wrapped up for us. And now we moved on to the combustion chamber. And there, well, the metal thickness readings were just fine. These sleeves, which is where the stay bolt goes into, the threads had started to deteriorate to the point they were having trouble seating and sealing. Additionally, some of the repairs made in the past, those types of repairs are no longer allowable. So we needed to cut those off, and there were 85 of those on the locomotive. We have now completely cut all the old ones off. We have some of the new ones already welded on, and when that process is complete, hopefully here in the next 45 days or so, we will then be ready to do the hydrostatic test on the boiler.
Regarding the boiler, we're now embarking on the renewal of the 1472-day certificate to get the boiler fully certified for another 15 years. So we've got probably 98% of the ultrasonic thickness readings taken across the entire length and breadth of the boiler. We have a few tricky spots left that we're still working on right now. The volunteers are working away at those.
There do need to be enough tubes removed to get a person in there to do a visual inspection and also do some hammer testing on some of the rivets and some of the bracing. Now you may ask yourself, why are we doing a hydrostatic test when we're then going to turn around and take more out of the boiler? Well, one of the main reasons we want to do it is to check all the welding work that has already been done inside the Firebox and combustion chamber. So that way we can pretty much say that we still need to go fix a few things, which we will then do, or that it is now totally sealed and watertight and we can totally move on to doing the boiler inspection.
We have running gear work ahead of us to do with the side rods. We have a couple of bushings that need replaced, and we'll be doing a little more work to some of the rods that need straightened and tested. We've been in the tender. We removed the oil bunker from the tender, and we will be returning her to burn coal. The stoker will be reinstalled and will be functioning as originally intended. We're preparing to do work to the tender cistern. That'll be a project for this spring to get started on.
We are going to remove and clean out all the old coating on the cistern and the tender, which is basically a rust preventative, and then apply a whole new coating inside. Other things that we have also accomplished are testing all the appliances like the air pumps and the stoker motor, and those all seem to be in good shape. We will, of course, put new oils in like the stoker motor. However, they are functioning and operating as they should be.
Other than these things with the boiler, the locomotive was in serviceable condition, so all the key appliances are essentially ready to go. So once this boiler work is complete, we're just about in a reassembly phase right now. And Fortunately, all those subsystems are essentially ready for service. So financially speaking, if we had $180,000 today, we could line up all the contractors, place orders for the materials we need, and essentially within 6 to 12 months have a finished operable locomotive. Will we have a locomotive we can put a fire in before then? Most likely we will. As we've all seen with other recent locomotive projects, getting that first fire in the firebox does not mean you're done with the project. There's always a lot of teething pains and little nagging issues to chase down that the first hydro test and the first fire up, second fire up will often reveal, and we'll be hard at work at completing those tasks.
So right now we're at about the 80% mark. And as soon as we raise that $185,000, we could actually be running and operating within a 12-month period of time. Really, probably 15 to 18 months is more realistic, but it could be done within a year.
I say the most memorable project would be polishing the bell for 2100 along with the 1352's whistle. I did those both in a weekend, and 2100's bell, I think they had already polished it at one point, and I said, well, I think I can do better. I had a lot of experience polishing brass, working with traction engines, so I gave it a shot, and here it mirrored the brass on it.
Probably the most memorable part of this restoration project that I have is the actual fabrication of the stay bolts for the firebox, because that was my first official step into the organization, and my first steps being skilled at preservation and railroad preservation. And I started learning that I didn't have to know anything going into the organization, and that the people here are so willing and able to teach you how to do everything, and that it's nothing to be afraid of to start rolling up your sleeves and start working. What really drives me to come down here every day, there's such a close family unit here, and it makes you feel like you belong. And so having that sense of community just further drives the desire to see these projects be accomplished and reach the goals.
I have gained a lot of experience working on this locomotive. I especially learned what goes into railroading. I didn't know anything about railroading. So going through brakeman training has taught me, like, this is a big deal to get something like this going. You have to follow a lot of rules and regulations with railroading, but also just general mechanical work. Even as a machinist, there's things that we had to do here that I've never done before, heard of, just to keep this thing going.
One of the big benefits of the steam locomotive was, in this case, it really did transform the way mankind actually started to now live their lives. We can now travel across the country safely and do it, back in the day, within about a week. Also, it was now economical to transport goods from state to state or clear across the country. Not only are we preserving American history and really the world's and mankind's history, but also putting it back into operation for thousands or even millions of people to enjoy over decades of time. So, and the enjoyment that brings speaks very well to why projects like this are worthwhile.
There's a common misconception that we find in society that the skills that it took to build these engines 40, 50, 60 or more years ago no longer exists. But yet if you look a little further, the truth is we have all these abilities, but they're done a little differently today than they were 40 or 50 years ago. So it's kind of neat to take advantage of current technology to do things a little more efficiently and with a little more pizzazz in a lot of ways. We're using a lot of automated manufacturing processes that the Reading Railroad didn't have at their disposal. Back in the days of steam welding, it was just becoming popular and accepted as a way to do some of these repairs. Now welding, we don't think twice about welding things together today. We weld things together today we couldn't weld together 50 or 60 years ago.
We have to be able to look back on how we did things in the past. It wasn't always just push a button and go. There was hours and hours of preparation. Here there's hundreds of hours of work going into this locomotive just to get it running. So I don't think we should forget the work that went into things accomplished in the past. It's a static machine right now, but it's not always going to be a static machine. You know, we are working towards a purpose of seeing this thing on the rails.
Many steam engines are preserved in our country. However, a lot of them are not good candidates to be able to restore. A lot of them need so much work that it's not feasible. The 2100 has been blessed because it's been through a number of excursions before. It's not a lot that's going to need to be done to get her up and running again and use her as an educational tool.
Even though the locomotive had been restored with Richard Kuno to get back in the late 80s, the locomotive really hasn't run. In fact, its last tube and boiler time, the 1472, it only ran 37 days. So the locomotive hasn't had a chance to go out and really prove itself of what it can do. And we're looking very forward to that with her 15-year excursion career upcoming and showing the world what this locomotive was built for and can still do today.
We've invested roughly $750,000 in largely donated labor and cash to where we are today over a 5 to 6 year period of time. We would welcome any donation you might be able to make to this project. If you go to our website, you can see numerous ways to donate. We encourage you to do so if this is a project that you find intriguing and that you want to help support. We would very much welcome your contributions today.